In 2023, Netflix released one of the most thrilling political dramas we've ever seen, The Diplomat. Nominated for several Emmys and Golden Globes, this show grips viewers to the screen with its unique insight into the behind-the-scenes of the political world, as well as its memorable characters and witty dialogue. The show centers around Kate Wyler, the new United States ambassador to the United Kingdom. Kate doesn't have the same power-hungry mentality as the average politician, as her experience handling diplomacy in mostly war-torn areas gave her a love and respect for the people. So how did Kate go from becoming a newly respected US ambassador for the UK to possibly starting World War III?
Ma'am, down.
Well, sit back and relax, because this show is going to be one plot twist after another as we take a deep dive into The Diplomat. The show starts off with a bang, literally. A total of 41 sailors on a British aircraft carrier, the HMS Courageous, suddenly die in an explosion near the Persian Gulf. US President William Trezelt Bill Rayburn is 100% sure that Iran is responsible for the attack. His reasoning is that the US recently commandeered an Iranian oil vessel, and supposedly Iran has decided to retaliate by attacking the UK. This makes both Kate and her husband, Hal Wyler, the perfect candidates to handle this situation, as they have extensive experience dealing with the Middle East. At this time, Kate and Hal are expecting Hal to be assigned as the new ambassador to Afghanistan, so they aren't surprised to get a call from the president's office. Hal was the former US ambassador to Lebanon and Iraq, which is where they met and got married. Hal can be a bit ruthless when it comes to getting the job done, which creates some tension between him and Kate in terms of handling foreign affairs. Nevertheless, they work well together, as Kate doesn't mind playing the role of ambassador's wife. Shockingly, when Rayburn calls them, they learn that the meeting is not with Hal, but with Kate. What could this mean? Kate shows up to the meeting with Rayburn and White House Chief of Staff Billy Appiah. She's expecting this to be about the recent attack since everyone is blaming Iran. But that's not why Kate is here. Right now, the US doesn't have an ambassador in the UK. So Rayburn was thinking about sending the Wylers there instead of Afghanistan. Kate is flattered but confused as to why they called her here to tell her so she could tell her husband the good news. Rayburn then reveals he wants Kate to be their ambassador, not the more experienced Hal.
That's more like it.
It's a lot for Kate to process, but all she can say is yes. While Kate flies to the UK, the Deputy Chief of Mission at the US Embassy in London, Stuart Hayford, gets a private message from Billy. He's already aware that Kate is on her way, but that's not why Billy's calling him. She drops a bomb that only a handful of people know the US Vice President, Grace Penn, is resigning in 6 months, and Rayburn assigned Kate to ambassador to see if she was capable of becoming the next vice president. She wants Stuart to groom Kate and report everything she does, which irritates Stuart because this isn't a part of his job, but he doesn't have a choice but to say yes. Kate lands in London with Hal, and Stuart escorts them to the Winfield House, the home of the US ambassador, where they are greeted by the residence manager, Frances, and her assistant, Penzie. Kate then meets with her staff, which also includes the US Embassy assistant, Elise, and the American Embassy officer, Ronnie, to talk about what will happen on her first day. The day involves a lot of ceremony and glamour, which makes things awkward for Kate because she had been preparing to do more substantive work in the Middle East instead of being here, and is not known for getting dolled up. Kate is then taken to the CIA station in London, where she's introduced to the station chief, Idra Park. She's given a rundown of the situation in the Gulf, and then has to moderate a call with Rayburn and the Prime Minister. So far, so good. During all this, Hal has been stuck back at the house and is getting a little restless playing second fiddle to his wife. It's hard for him to now play the supportive role for his wife, but it's not like anyone's getting the position they want nowadays. Kate is then taken to the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Offices, or FCDO, where she meets the UK Foreign Secretary, Austin Dennison. They debrief each other on the current situation, when suddenly Dennison springs a surprise meeting with the Prime Minister, Nicol Trowbridge, a man who shoots first and asks questions later. Trowbridge is delighted to meet her, but constantly brings up the fact that she's a woman in a man's field. Afghanistan's looking real nice right about now. After that humiliation, Kate finally accomplishes something when she speaks with Miguel Gannon, the US Secretary of State, in a meeting that Hal arranged without her knowing. Gannon clearly doesn't like Kate, mostly because of Hal, and he's already looking for a reason to get her replaced. Regardless, she successfully convinces Gannon to keep Rayburn from making any statements about the attack for one day, so he doesn't potentially start another unnecessary war with Iran until they can verify verify it was Iran. So does this mean she passed one of her tests? She then pays respect to the fallen soldiers by respectfully presenting a bouquet of flowers at the memorial. But her time is cut short there when Hal, who somehow managed to get away from the house, tries to ruin her public image by trying to get a shot of her talking to Trowbridge's corrupt former campaign manager, Meg Roylin. Luckily, Stewart got Kate out of there before things escalated. Back at the embassy, Idra reveals to Kate that they found a satellite image of an Iranian boat near the aircraft carrier at the time of the explosion. Kate is determined to believe it was a coincidence, but the mountain of evidence is pointing to Iran as the culprit. Kate has to worry about this later because now she has to do a ceremonial carriage ride with Hal, so the press can take a few shots of her for the public. During this ride, Francis informs Stewart that Kate and Hal are sleeping in separate beds, revealing that they are planning on getting a divorce. This concerns Stewart because if Kate ends up being the new vice president, a divorce will greatly damage her public image in the United States. When he confronts Kate about this, she confirms it and says that once she gets settled in London, Hal will leave. Kate doesn't know she's being groomed to be the vice president, but Hal does, so Stewart can't believe Hal isn't more concerned for Kate and her career. Hal argues he is, as Kate wishing she'd rather be literally anywhere else makes her the perfect candidate.
Obvious rule in the world, no one who likes power should ever have it.
You can't eliminate every public-facing piece of the job.
That's why we're here. In a land of hats. She is a frog in a pot of water. We have 6 months. We can turn the heat up slowly and she won't jump out. But you can't tell her you're boiling her alive.
This metaphor gives me a lot of confidence.
After the carriage ride, Hal feels uncomfortable in his suit, so he's escorted to a car by someone he thinks is a member of the stylist crew. In the car, she drugs Hal unconscious and drives away, with no one suspecting a thing. Episode 2 begins with Hal waking up tied to a chair in an unknown building, and Kate being informed of Hal leaving the premises with another woman. From the angle of the security footage, it looks more like Hal is cheating on Kate, but Kate knows Hal better than anyone. Yes, he may be a scumbag sometimes, but he wouldn't cheat on her. So she has Stewart call the RSO the ambassador's security advisor. By now, Hal has been made a bit more comfortable, and he's not too scared by what's going on, as this isn't the first time he's been kidnapped. I guess some people really don't like ambassadors. His kidnappers put him on the phone with the deputy foreign minister of Iran, Rasul Shaheen, an old acquaintance of his. Apparently Hal wasn't supposed to be drugged in order for this meeting to take place, so Shaheen apologizes for that. He brought Hal here in hopes of convincing him that Iran was not responsible for the attack on the HMS Courageous. He also informs Hal that a planned assassination of a retired U.S. general, in retaliation for the killing of Qasem Soleimani, was called off to prevent a diplomatic escalation. Shaheen explains that if Iran is attacked, they will have no choice but to retaliate, as this would be an unprovoked attack. He releases Hal with the hope that Hal will prevent this from happening. Hal returns to Winfield House, where he's examined and questioned about what just happened to him. Kate was worried for Hal, so that night she sleeps in the same bed as him. Honestly, I think Kate is more thrilled that she was right that the attack wasn't done by Iran, especially since she doesn't stay in the bed for very long. So close. It's also revealed here that Stewart and Idra are secretly sleeping together. I wonder how long that's been going on. The next day, Kate attends a memorial for the fallen soldiers. On the way in, she finally meets Roylin. Despite the fear of bad press, Roylin offers to help Kate in any way, and it turns out that Roylin isn't the satanic devil everyone thinks she is. Or is she? During the service, Trowbridge gives a passionate speech that honors the fallen sailors, and vows to hold accountable the nation responsible for the attack. You'll notice he doesn't officially blame Iran, and this angers one of the sailors' widows as she calls Trowbridge a disgrace for not admitting it. Trowbridge tries to comfort her, but is pressured into admitting Iran did this, and promises to rain hellfire on them. The quote goes viral, which makes Kate very worried. And Kate's worry is warranted the next day as an innocent Muslim family of 4 living in the UK is killed in a vehicle ramming attack. This makes Idra want to relay some of Hal's information to the CIA before it can be fully verified, which makes Kate even more worried as Hal has a track record of being ruthless to get the job done. To make matters worse, Rayburn is on his way to the UK. Oh crap. Kate has a hunch that Hal is responsible for this again, so she calls Carol, a CIA analyst and friend of Kate, back when they were stationed in Iraq, to verify. She discovers Hal had tipped off Shaheen about his presence in London via a mutual contact in Italy. Hal did this by using a burner phone and calling Shaheen shortly after the HMS Courageous bombing, which allowed Iran to get a head start on proving their innocence. So the kidnapping was planned, so to speak. Kate was furious at Hal because this undermines her professional authority. and is also a breach of trust. Hal's actions might have helped prevent a war, but everything he did went against U.S. foreign policy.
My husband snuck out and called Iran and then lied to me about it? How do you think that looks?
Who cares?
I care! I am supposed to run this place. I was almost fired by the Secretary of State on day one.
Kate then tries to appeal to Gannon and Dennison to convince Rayburn to not come to the UK so that he doesn't ruin his reputation in starting an unnecessary war with Iran. But there's nothing they can do. All Kate can do is prepare for Rayburn's arrival, and she tells Hal that once this is over, he needs to leave and stay out of her business. Hal says he can't leave, accidentally revealing that if they get divorced, it would ruin her chances at becoming the vice president. To say this left Kate stunned would be an understatement. The next episode begins right where we left off, with Rayburn arriving and greeting Hal and a still stunned Kate. They get down to business, and Kate starts off trying to convince Rayburn that Iran is innocent, and reveals that Hal is the source. Rayburn is relieved by this, so Kate urges him to turn Trowbridge's attention to nations more likely to be responsible, like Russia or Saudi Arabia. For all they know, it may have even just been unexploded marine ordnance. Trowbridge then arrives, and Kate and Dennison arrange for a private lunch between Rayburn and Trowbridge, where Rayburn can convince the Prime Minister to back off of Iran. During this, Kate suspects Stewart knew about her being considered for vice president, and he doesn't deny it. She gets very upset because many people know more about her life than she does. Kate then speaks with Idra, who reveals she knows Kate's interaction with Carol, and Kate has to reveal everything, including Hal connecting Shaheen with the burner phone. Rayburn's lunch with Trowbridge goes well, and he successfully gets Trowbridge to back off Iran. Around this time, we learn that Iran had just sent an infantry battalion to the Gulf. So Rayburn intended to send a carrier battle group to escort the HMS Courageous to port in Bahrain. Apparently, the ship is sinking, but when Kate speaks privately with Dennison, she learns the ship is not sinking. Trowbridge lied just so he could get the Americans involved. So much for him being a straight shooter. Kate warns Billy about this and urges Billy to not let Rayburn go to war with Iran, especially since she and her husband already have a good relationship with Shaheen. It's worth noting that Shaheen is one of the few Iranians that doesn't think America is the spawn of Satan. And if America does send their warships to aid a carrier that isn't sinking, it will ruin everything. Billy promises to do her best, and then they speak in private regarding Kate becoming the vice president. It's a meeting that should have happened from the very beginning, and after hearing Billy sing her praises, Kate begins to warm up to the idea of becoming vice president. However, when Kate realizes Hal knew about this a month ago, she straight up punches him. Took her long enough. With her dress covered in twigs and mud, and maybe some of Hal's blood, Kate speaks with Rayburn and asks to step down from being an ambassador. He turns it down, but promises to not send any ships to aid Trowbridge. So I guess this is a win-win, right? Episode 4 begins with Kate and Hal attending a gala, and Kate has to reluctantly dress up. Did I mention how much she hates heels? Every political head in the country is there, which allows Kate to do some business. But all Hal wants to do is dance with his wife, although it becomes clear that dancing together was Stewart's idea, given how many photographers are taking pictures of the happy couple. That's definitely not getting divorced, by the way. Trowbridge then makes it a surprise appearance and makes it a lovely speech where he publicly reveals that Rayburn made a U-turn, causing a rift in the US-UK relation.
We shall do it alone.
Well, now we know why he invited you.
The Iranian defense minister responds with a very explicit rant on Twitter, and Kate learns that Dennison summoned the Iranian ambassador without her knowing. She calls Dennison to complain about why she wasn't included in this, but he sincerely had no idea what she was talking about. Kate realizes Iran is responding to a recent comment she had Ronnie make regarding Turkey, and phrased it in a way that Iran would understand because Kate knows them so well. She then convinces Dennison to set up a meeting with the Iranian ambassador, Parham Najjar. Before the meeting, Kate and Stewart talk privately in a car where they talk about Kate's opinions on becoming the vice president and getting divorced. Kate says it's nothing politicians haven't faced before, and that their separate beds lifestyle can easily be accommodated. It's here that Stewart reveals he became a foreign service officer to get out of Washington, D.C., as he used to run campaigns with Billy. This explains why they know each other so well, and maybe why Billy trusted him to groom Kate. The reason he left was because he had enough of the corrupt politics, especially when his candidate lost in a move similar to how President George Bush beat Al Gore. This is why he's determined to help Kate become vice president. At first, he didn't want to because it meant going back to dirty politics. but after seeing Kate in action, he believes that no one else should have the job. Kate calls Stuart a good person and pressures him into telling Billy about her divorcing Hal, as Billy doesn't know yet. Kate finally meets with Najjar in Dennison's office, and I should mention that this was secretly planned, as not even Dennison's staff knows about this. Najjar is hesitant to meet with her until Dennison assures him that Iran would already be at war with the US, had it not been for Kate. Satisfied, Najjar gives them a name, Roman Lenkov, the head of the Russian mercenary group that organized and funded the attack. He then destroys the evidence, and Kate sympathizes with Najjar about what it took to get this information. Unfortunately, all this has been very stressful for Najjar, and he starts having a panic attack, so they help him sit down and drink some tea. Suddenly, he starts choking, and to everyone's shock, he actually dies. Dennison calls for help while Kate dips out of there and comes back inside, as if she wasn't there all along. The paramedics try to resuscitate Najjar, but Kate informs Dennison that he's already dead. They quickly transport him to the hospital and have him declared dead there, not in his office, for fear of this looking like Dennison just assassinated the Iranian ambassador. What the hell just happened? As Najjar is wheeled out, Kate and Dennison calm down by drinking some of his whiskey, but the whole time they can't stop inappropriately laughing about the situation. Dennison then accidentally spills some whiskey on her blouse and awkwardly wipes it away with his handkerchief before giving it to her. Ooh, I think they might like each other. She returns home to find Hal with a new hat, and overwhelmed by everything, she makes love to him. Episode 5 begins with Kate preparing to leave for the Chevening House, a country home for the Prime Minister. She's going to formulate a strategy on Iran and Russia, while also publicly showing that the US and UK are still the bestest of friends. Before she leaves, she and Hal discuss their recent romp in the sheets, and both of them agree it doesn't change the viability of their marriage. They arrive at the country house where they meet two other British diplomats, Hoop, who represents Iran, and Kemper Waith, who represents Russia. They also meet Dennison's sassy sister, Cecilia, who makes her presence known everywhere, especially to Hal. The two end up spending a lot of time together while the meeting takes place. During the meeting, the discussion ends up pivoting to how Najjar died in Dennison's office, and Kate accidentally slips information she shouldn't know. Dennison pulls her out of the meeting before she says anything else, where he reveals Trowbridge wants to end relations with the US, not mend them. Something about British pride and not wanting America to rescue them all the time? I don't know, man. As he put it might be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be its friend is fatal. Kate flips out when she hears this and points out how dumb this decision is, but they have bigger problems right now because Trowbridge has decided to crash their meeting. Trowbridge rolls up to the house like some hotshot rock star and then tells Kate and Dennison he doesn't want to focus their efforts on Iran, but Russia. Kate isn't as hasty to declare war on another nation and suggests that if Russia framed Iran, Trowbridge has the chance to turn one of Russia's allies into theirs. Trowbridge doesn't like speaking in ifs and demands a total shift to Russia. Shockingly, Dennison supports this, and this is the only way to get Trowbridge to leave, but Kate is more concerned about lying to the Prime Minister about their intentions. Dennison is aware of this, which is why he needs Kate to back him up on the next meeting.
Needs a brisk, chatty briefing on Russia strategy, something that makes him feel
Smart and in control.
I suppose, yeah.
He's not a unicorn.
During the next meeting, Dennison confronts Trowbridge about his goals for hasty military action against Russia, adding that it would lead to nuclear responses. Trowbridge is about to lose it until Kate calms him down and allows them some time to come up with a less explosive way to handle Russia. Trowbridge gives them just 20 minutes, and the best they can come up with is a travel ban on all Russian citizens. Trowbridge immediately hates this idea, and he's tired of playing nice with a country that commits genocide on other nations. Meanwhile, Hal and Cecilia have been spending all day together and end up going for a picnic by the house's pond. By now, Hal has learned that Cecilia recently attempted suicide and has been under the constant care of her brother, so he wonders if she's someone that likes to always be sad. She denies it, so Hal strips naked and dives into the pond. He coaxes her to join him, and they end up skinny dipping together. One thing leads to another, and they end up doing the dirty deed in a dirty pond. Later, Hal tells Kate about the incident and plays it off like this is his role in the marriage as the ambassador's wife.
This is your latest stab at saving our marriage. You're the wife. You do everything I ask. You're so goddamn docile, I'd be psychotic to let you go.
On the bright note, Stuart gets a call from Idra that confirms Najjar died of a heart attack, not poison, so it really just was really bad timing for Kate. On a not-so-bright side, she also informs Stuart that Kate just asked the Department of Defense for a list of targets the Russians would be comfortable in letting them blow up. Stuart rushes back to the meeting to stop Kate from giving Trowbridge the list, but he's too late. As expected, Kate's bombshell derailed the meeting and Dennison no longer trusts her. Kate argues she wasn't actually serious in letting Trowbridge bomb anything and only did it to shut him up, but Dennison points out that he no longer has any sway over the Prime Minister as the Foreign Secretary. Kate retorts that happened long before she opened her mouth and he storms out. Hal tries to cheer Kate up by having them both stealthily raid the kitchen, only to run into Trowbridge, simultaneously raiding the wine cellar. So they decide to share a little midnight snack in the kitchen, totally off the record. During their midnight snack of cheese, tarts, and wine, Kate tries to convince Trowbridge to give her a chance to come up with a diplomatic response, and surprisingly, he actually backs down. Kate, Dennison, and their team spend the night crafting a package of sanctions on Russian oligarchs, but not before Kate apologizes to Dennison. However, Kate is a little drunk from the very old wine Trowbridge found, and Dennison misinterprets her apology as her coming on to him.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, I need you.
I know. I feel it too. I can't think when you're in the same room. I can barely breathe, but I don't think this is something that we can act on now.
Oh, no, sorry, not that.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's a bit awkward. The next morning, Kate and Dennison pitch their peaceful proposal to Trowbridge, but unfortunately, Kate's conversation last night with Trowbridge meant nothing to him, and he still wants to blow up something in Russia. More specifically, the Russian forces in Syria in something called the Aleppo-Raqqa-Hama Triangle, or ARHT. This freaking guy. Kate's experience with the Middle East makes her realize Trowbridge must be playing telephone with another source, as only a handful of people know what the ARHT is. On a hunch, Hal and Kate speak with Cecilia, who informs them that Roylan is the one who's been feeding Trowbridge information, despite how much they hate each other. During this time, Idra meets with the chief of MI6, Tom Libby, and learns that no one in Russian government ordered the attack on the HMS Courageous. Maybe it was just an angry sea ghost. With Cecilia's help, Kate sneaks her way into Roylan's residence, while Hal does her job for her, and meets with Gannon to discuss what they're gonna bomb. Roylan knows why Kate is there, and explains why she fed Trowbridge information about the ARHT. This next part is very important, so please pay close attention. Scotland is on the verge of declaring independence from the UK after the recent death of one of Scotland's members in Parliament. Their new member will likely call for a second referendum to declare Scotland's independence, and if they win, there's a high probability that Ireland and Wales will do the same. If this happens, Trowbridge will go down in history as the Prime Minister that lost the United Kingdom. To prevent this, someone orchestrated the attack on the HMS Courageous, creating a false flag attack to give Trowbridge a chance to unify the nation against Russia and allow the referendum to become irrelevant. Roylan doesn't want the war with Russia, she just wanted to increase Trowbridge's political gain through a unifying event. Kate returns to Winfield House, and she and Hal work with Dennison to convince Trowbridge to settle for bombing Lenkov's troops in Libya. Thankfully, Trowbridge is satisfied with this, but Gannon said no. Hal realizes that Gannon is trying to be president one day and wants to make Rayburn look bad, so he urges Kate to take the plan directly to Rayburn. So Kate makes Gannon's night the worst night of his life when she convinces Rayburn to overrule Gannon's objection to the plan. I think she's getting pretty good at this ambassador thing. Episode 7 begins with Kate meeting with the Russian ambassador Oleg Balakin to discuss the attack on Lenkov's troops in Libya. At first, Oleg comes across as just another Russian zealot, spouting insults at how terrible America is compared to Russia. But as he's shouting insults, he hands Kate a piece of paper with directions to a wine company just outside the building. Kate realizes what's going on and leaves the room, while Oleg rolls the piece of paper into a cigarette and loudly insults Kate as if she were still in the room. There, Kate meets a woman who gives her information that Lenkov will be visiting his daughter at a villa in southern France on the 30th for 3 days. Basically, Russia is giving America full permission to arrest Lenkov. Kate then returns to Oleg, who's been ranting all this time, and he concludes their meeting. Kate then tells Stuart everything she learned, including Lenkov being an independent faction from Russia that acted without their consent, meaning Russia didn't attack the carrier, just Lenkov. During this, Hal learns from Billy that Rayburn intends to fire Gannon after learning about his attempts to stab him in the back and become president. This is shocking news to Kate, who assumed at first Gannon was getting fired because of her, but she has to worry about flying back to Washington, D.C. to brief Rayburn about Lenkov. Kate arrives to meet with Rayburn, unaware that she'd only have a few seconds to speak with him alongside a crowd of people. As it turns out, Rayburn has already set in motion plans to arrest Lenkov in France. After the meeting, Kate catches up with an old friend of hers named Jill, who tells her about the diplomatic situation in Afghanistan. If you remember, that's where Kate and Hal were originally assigned to. Sadly, the situation there is deteriorating quickly, and there's a good chance another of Kate's old colleagues is already dead. Kate can't help but feel guilty about not being there to help, especially since this is more her thing and not whatever the hell she's doing here in the UK. Nevertheless, Kate returns to London and meets with an outraged Trowbridge. It turns out Gannon informed Trowbridge that they were pulling out of Libya, 12 minutes after Trowbridge reassured Libya that they were going to help them. It made him look like an asshole, and he's growing sick of everyone changing their minds over who is responsible for who. But above all, he's officially become fed up with America.
You know, there was something refreshing about the days when America looked us in the face and said we should go fuck ourselves. Now we're back to getting dry buggered and told it's love.
The season 1 finale opens with Trowbridge loving America and the idea to just arrest Lenkov. Huh? Apparently just putting Lenkov on trial and not going to war with another nation is just enough to unify the people and no longer make Trowbridge look like an asshole, at least to the UK. Now all they have to do is convince France to let them carry out a British operation in their country.
Deadly gear, marching Lenkov off to justice, it's, well, the French will hate it.
Yeah, I mean, they'll come around.
All in all, this has made Kate very happy. A job well done. During this, Idra becomes aware of Kate being groomed for something, and Stuart ends up telling her about Kate being considered for vice president. Idra's happy that Stuart is sort of being a campaign manager again, but then realizes if Kate becomes vice president, then Stuart will be going back with her to Washington, D.C. Idra becomes very unhappy because a long time ago, Stuart made her give up a position in Cairo so they could stay together. She ends up breaking up with him right then and there, and a devastated Stuart walks out of her office. Poor Stuart. Before she leaves for France, Kate lets Hal deliver a speech at Chatham House in her stead while she's in Paris. The guy was bored and needed something to do since Kate wouldn't let him tag along. Hal then requests that a draft of the speech be sent to Billy, and Stuart later informs Kate of this. Hal gives a tear-jerking speech, and it is met with resounding applause. He gets the attention of Merritt Grove, a member of the Conservative Party, and Hal puts him in touch with Rayburn. Kate finds out about this and realizes Hal is trying to get Gannon's old job as Secretary of State, which causes her to flip out. She forbids Hal from contacting Grove ever again, even asking Stuart to make sure Hal doesn't continue with this. Kate then accompanies Dennison to meet with the French Minister of the Interior, Brielle Fournier, at the Louvre. She ends up having to wear a fancy red dress, and Dennison is in awe at how beautiful she looks. Does this make it their first date? Brielle informs Kate that the UK has permission to execute the mission to arrest Lenkov. However, she also informs Kate that this isn't just an arrest, but an assassination. This upsets Kate, and she storms out with Dennison chasing after her, trying to calm her down. Kate asks Dennison why British soldiers are going to execute Lenkov bin Laden style, but Dennison has no idea what she's talking about. Kate then puts it together that the man who hired Lenkov was none other than Trowbridge himself.
A dead Lenkov is only good for the people who hired him. If Prime Minister Nicol Trowbridge wants him dead,
Nicol Trowbridge hired him.
Before they both can have a second to process this, Kate is informed that a car explosion has seriously injured Hal, Stuart, and Ronnie when they were trying to escort Grove. The season started with a bang, and it ended with a bang. Bravo! Season 2 begins with Hal, Stuart, and Ronnie covered in burns being taken away by paramedics. Grove didn't survive, and Dennison and his team are scrambling to figure out who was responsible for the explosion. Dennison suspects that anyone, including their own governments, could be after them, especially after finding out that Grove has organized donations to the Conservative Party from Russian sources like Lenkov. Kate and Dennison return to London and head straight for the hospital. Kate speaks with Idra and informs her of the recent discovery regarding Trowbridge hiring Lenkov to attack the carrier. Kate fears Hal and the others aren't safe in the British hospital and don't even trust the British police guarding them. Thankfully, Idra believes her and locks down the hospital. The doctors successfully manage to stabilize the badly burned Hal, and Kate finally sees him. The sight of his damaged body shatters her, and she breaks down in tears. During this, Dennison meets with MI6 head Tom and tries to confirm the kill order for Lenkov. Instead, Instead, he ends up meeting with Trowbridge's wife, Lydia. She informs him that Royland has gone missing, and Trowbridge has asked Dennison to find her as a personal favor to him. Trowbridge often relies on his wife for advice, and as she leaves, she warns Dennison to not interfere with Trowbridge's relationship with Royland. I wonder why she went missing. Hal is doing a lot better now, and he and Kate try to figure out who else knew about Hal meeting Grove. The only other people they can think of are Stuart and Ronnie, but then Kate realizes she also told Royland. She informs Idra of this, and Kate feels awful thinking it's all her fault, but Hal reassures her it isn't. Kate then attends a Cobra meeting, which is an emergency meeting between the different cabinet offices in London. Trowbridge storms into the meeting demanding retaliation against Russia, but then Philippa, the MI5 Director General, reveals that they analyzed the bomb to be British made. The revelation silences Trowbridge, and he asks to speak to her in private. This makes Idra think Trowbridge is trying to shield Royland from potential blowback, or put simply, cleaning house. Idra also wonders if Dennison is secretly in on all of this. Back at the hospital, Kate learns that Stuart and Idra are a couple, not knowing they just split. Then Idra has some tragic news to deliver. Stuart will be okay, but Ronnie has sadly died. The episode ends with an unknown person trying to contact Kate at the hospital, and it's revealed to be Royland. Episode 2 begins with Kate, Hal, Dennison, and Trowbridge attending Grove's funeral at St. Paul's Cathedral. During this, Idra smuggles Royland into the service, purposefully allowing her to be spotted by Dennison and Trowbridge in the hopes of ending the manhunt for her. The deception works brilliantly. It's like watching a well-choreographed dance performed by CIA agents. They should really go on tour. After the service, Hal notices Kate giving Dennison a lot of looks, and he asks her if they slept together in Paris. Kate says no, but adds that she wanted to. Hal leaves to use the bathroom, but not before telling her she can still sleep with him if she wants to. What a cool husband. Dennison then approaches Kate and informs her that despite his best efforts to rescind the kill order on Lenkov, he was unsuccessful. This is bad, because Lenkov is their best chance at identifying who hired him. The next day, Idra informs Kate that Royland wants to meet with Dennison. They aren't on the best of terms, so Royland wants Kate to convince Dennison to see her, which is somehow even more complicated than it sounds. Just then, Stuart hobbles his way into the office on crutches, and Kate and Idra tend to him like two overprotective nurses. Kate still believes that the explosion was her fault, but Stuart assures her that it wasn't. But he's only saying this because he doesn't know Kate called Royland. Stuart also informs Kate that he and Idra broke up. Somehow Dennison agrees to meet with Royland. Well, actually, he was just tricked into meeting with her. Royland informs him that Lenkov was hired by the British extremists opposed to Scottish independence, and one of them was Grove. I feel like there's more to this story. She implies that Grove was killed because of Kate's call to her asking about Grove, and that Dennison is rattling the extremists by investigating the kill order. Kate then persuades Dennison to hold off for one more day, while Idra keeps Royland protected in a CIA safe house, with the hopes of getting more information out of her. Trowbridge then arrives at the embassy to pay respects to Ronnie, but he's really here wanting to know why Kate called Royland. Kate mentions everything, including how Trowbridge might react if the French didn't agree to Lenkov's arrest, but she leaves out anything involving Grove. Trowbridge leaves, and Kate finally confesses everything to Stuart. She reveals that Trowbridge is behind the attack. Royland is in the building, and Kate is responsible for Grove and Ronnie's deaths, because she called Royland. This devastates Stuart, and now he blames her for their deaths. That night, Kate and Hal have another fight over who is responsible for the tragedy. They resume sleeping in separate beds when Hal says something along the lines of, "Now you know the cost of their duty, the cost of business." Episode 3 begins with Trowbridge informing the nation that British forces successfully killed Lenkov. He claims they tried to take him unalive, but had no choice when Lenkov fired on them. And we see what actually happened, which is that the soldiers mercilessly executed Lenkov and his wife in their sleep. So much for their witness. Kate is furious and suspects Royland used them to delay Dennison. Stuart favors handing Royland over to the police, but Idra doesn't want to just yet, as she believes Royland has more critical information to offer them. At least this is the legal way to let people know their prime minister is a mass murderer. So let's hope Russia doesn't retaliate in full force over this. Kate visits Dennison to apologize for everything, but he informs her that he was able to get enough votes to pass the motion of no confidence that will force Trowbridge to resign. I guess Kate and the others aren't the only ones who believe Lenkov's death was an illegal execution? It's worth noting that if this happens, there's a good chance Dennison would become Prime Minister. He asks Kate if he can give Trowbridge the news during Kate's Independence Day celebration later that day, and Kate allows it. She then tells Stuart the good news, and he's incredibly happy. However, he isn't thrilled about how Trowbridge is being axed, as Dennison plans on giving Trowbridge the news in a secluded private location like Kate and Dennison were attempting a coup. Later, Stuart informs Billy about this, and at first she's not thrilled about the location of the meeting, but then decides to let Kate have a win. This prompts Stuart to say Kate is not vice president material, and Billy asks why, and Stuart mentions Kate is romantically involved with Dennison. This, of course, is not true, even if Kate would maybe like to be. And when Billy pressures Stuart for verification, he keeps dodging the question. What the hell are you doing, Stuart? The 4th of July party commences, and it is poppin'. Trowbridge arrives and informs Kate he's been asked to visit the First Minister of Scotland, inviting Kate and Hal to come with him. When it comes time to tell Trowbridge he's done, there are a lot of cold feet from those that just hours ago wanted him to resign. Remember how I said killing Lenkov and arranging the deaths of the 41 sailors would be a unifying event? Well, it has done that, and the entire nation thinks Trowbridge is a hero. And if he were to resign now and come out as a traitor, the nation would crumble like it was foretold. Dennison sees Kate's conversation with Trowbridge and decides to resign and expose Trowbridge on his own. I guess nice guys still finish last. As the party reaches a conclusion, Kate gives a speech commemorating recent events and the strong relationship between the US and UK since the Revolutionary War. During this, Stuart attempts to leave the party, but decides to wait when a woman has been waiting forever for her car to be valeted. Suddenly, the fireworks show goes off, and the explosions cause Stuart to relive some PTSD from the car explosion. He struggles to be strong and hastily invites the woman into his car. On stage, Hal is having a similar reaction, but thankfully he has Kate to comfort him. Episode 4 begins with Stuart discovering the woman he invited into the car was a CIA agent sent to test his mental health. Apparently, the woman had recorded their entire conversation, including the damning rants Stuart uttered when they were making love. Who knew the CIA hired overachievers? Billy hired her because she is concerned for Stuart, especially after their last conversation. Stuart realizes he hasn't been the same since the accident and Ronnie's death, and admits this to Kate. Kate comforts him, saying she and Hal had stuff like this happen to them all the time in the Middle East, which may be one of the reasons why their marriage is failing.
And they felt like our kids, you know? All of them. All of you. At every embassy.
She understands if Stuart wants to leave, but if he stays, he has to pretend he doesn't hate her, because she does the same to Hal, except she actually hates him. Later, Stuart asks Elise, who's been grieving the most regarding Ronnie's death, to allow a new employee to use Ronnie's old desk, since she's been camping out on the guest sofas. It's hard for both of them, but it's the first step in moving forward. Stuart also retracts his assessment he made to Billy regarding Kate being ready for vice president. You're a good man, Stuart. Per request, Hal speaks privately with Royland at a secluded location. We don't hear their conversation, but all we know is she revealed Trowbridge wasn't involved in the attack, but several other government officials were. Kate believes Royland is playing Hal, but Hal actually believes Royland. Kate and Idra then speak with Royland while Hal moderates in the corner, where she confesses she was the mastermind behind everything. Once again, pay attention to this, guys. Lenkov was supposed to use a type of magnetic mine called a limpet mine, which wouldn't have created such a massive explosion. Instead, he used a small anti-ship missile, but the large explosion only occurred because the Courageous was already damaged by an unrelated matter. No one was supposed to die, but in this business, nothing goes according to plan. Royland also mentions that Grove was involved, and someone named Lenny Stendig. When Grove approached Hal, as Royland learned from Kate, Royland and the others panicked, thinking Grove was going to ask for an asylum and confess everything. So Lenny, who has been known as difficult to control, planted a bomb in Grove's car, and what happened to Hal, Stuart, and Ronnie was an accident.
More accurate.
Royland does say one thing, though. She begs Kate to make sure Dennison doesn't resign. Kate and Idra create a plan for Royland to confess this all to Trowbridge in Scotland. then gauge his reaction to judge his innocence when they tap his phone. If he calls the police, he's innocent, but if he calls his lawyer, he's guilty. In the meantime, Hal convinces Dennison not to resign and to come with him and Kate to Scotland, because he knows he and Kate were planning on having sex in Paris, the day Hal got blown up. They all arrive in Scotland to carry out the plan where the First Minister of Scotland, Gemma Dode, congratulates Trowbridge on avenging the deaths of the fallen sailors. In the shadows, Idra and her team work carefully to catch Trowbridge's reaction, and Dennison is escorted to witness everything from a secure location. Kate manages to steal Trowbridge away from the party and into a bugged room with Royland. Trowbridge confesses that he knew about the plan minus the false flag part, so Royland reveals everything to him. The news shatters Trowbridge, realizing his closest advisor just betrayed her country, and he snaps. He starts choking Royland, prompting Dennison and everyone to come out of their hiding spots to stop him. This was the reaction they did not plan for, but as Trowbridge lets go, Royland's head unintentionally slams into the hardwood floor, creating a pool of blood. Uh-oh. The next episode begins with the CIA nurse stopping the bleeding, while Kate, pretending to be calm, informs Hal that Royland almost died. Although not the reaction they expected, this does prove that Trowbridge is innocent, although time will tell if he's guilty of recent manslaughter. Kate then tries to calm a traumatized Trowbridge as he rejoins the party, while Idra informs Royland that despite everything she just confessed, she has no choice but to remain under CIA custody. As the party ends, Trowbridge speaks to Kate privately, and he is pissed because he knows Kate set him up after suspecting he was a mass murderer. Trowbridge is also confused as to how Dennison found his way to Scotland, also suspecting he is secretly working with Kate. Kate vouches for Dennison, but by now Trowbridge has lost all trust in Kate. When Kate tries to reassure Dennison, he brushes past her as he also doesn't trust her anymore. What a twist! The corrupt politician was innocent. That night, Idra's report alarms the CIA director and everyone in Washington, so much so that Grace Penn, the vice president herself, is on her way to London. This is troubling news because no one knows if Grace knows that Kate is on the shortlist for her job.
Yeah, she definitely knows.
Kate briefs Grace on all that's happened, but everything was so short notice that Kate wasn't able to prepare anything for her. This doesn't help the fact that Grace is already intimidating even when she doesn't say anything. Grace then meets with Trowbridge and Dennison, who have now become the best of friends, where they hope to find a solution to all this recent madness. However, Grace is more concerned about Trowbridge wanting to declare war on Russia, and Dennison tries to reassure her that Trowbridge is trying to retract that. However, in the end, they decide to bury the story for at least a year, while placing the blame on Russia. After the meeting, Kate speaks again with Grace, where Grace gives her a reality check on what it means to be a vice president. Kate might be better than others at navigating the political world, but the reason why no one takes her seriously is because of her appearance. I mentioned before that Kate doesn't like dresses or high heels, or that she likes to blend into the crowd, but as a vice president, she will need to create a character that little girls will want to dress up as on Halloween.
Looking to the north, you probably think your hair says you're too busy serving your country to get a blowout, but it reads as bedhead, which sends a signal I think in this case is better unsent. East and west, try a bra with a little padding. I know there's not much to hide, but when your jacket opens, I'm getting headlights, which takes us to the south.
It's a lot for Kate to process, but then again, who loves being called a sloppy hussy? Later, Hal calls Grace a sore loser, but Kate disagrees as she actually admires Grace. Hal and Kate have dinner with Grace, where the issue of why Grace is resigning is brought up. Despite Grace believing she is the perfect person to help run this country, her husband Todd had a recent financial scandal, and the White House felt it better that she just stepped down. Kate and Hal encourage her to keep fighting for her job, but Hal speaks longer than he should and goes on a rant about how irrelevant the vice president can be compared to the actual president. He adds that America shouldn't have Grace as their VP, but Kate. Afterwards, Kate tries to apologize on behalf of Hal to Grace, but it's nothing Grace hasn't heard before. If anything, this experience has made Kate and Grace become friends. Let's see how long this lasts. The answer is just 90 seconds, as immediately after Kate tries to call Billy and convince her to support Grace, only for Hal to reveal that the idea to bomb an aircraft carrier in the first place came from Grace. How many people are mixed up in this thing? The season 2 finale begins with Kate coming to terms with the fact that America was behind the attack on the British carrier. Hal also reveals that the reason why Rayburn was trying to blame Iran for the attacks is because even he doesn't know about it. This revelation makes Kate finally certain she wants to be vice president, and even tries on a new look, per Grace's advice. Unfortunately, Rayburn calls Grace to tell her Trowbridge wants her in charge of a portfolio overseeing nuclear power, which means Grace will stay as vice president. Obviously, Trowbridge didn't know Grace was resigning, and Grace tries to apologize for taking away Kate's chances at being VP, but Kate puts on a smile and says, "Don't worry about it." Everyone attends a fancy dinner, where Trowbridge will announce Grace's new duties. Billy wants Stuart to make sure Trowbridge doesn't mention it because the last thing they need is Grace being some sort of nuclear czar. Surprisingly, Trowbridge doesn't announce it, but at the part when he was going to mention it, Trowbridge couldn't help but look at Kate. Grace sees this and wants to know what's going on, as she was well aware Trowbridge was going to announce her new position.
It's somebody's job, and you want to make sure it's available.
That's not what I'm after.
Hal confesses to Grace that they know she gave Royland the idea for the attack, and this prompts Grace to pull Kate aside and have a nice, friendly chat in the other room. Kate, you better run. Grace's chief of staff, Nora Korim, escorts Kate to another room where Grace drags in a large map of the world. She then proceeds to explain why she did what she did, and I hope you're paying attention because here we go again. The quickest way for Russia to penetrate the American naval defenses is from the Arctic. America used to have a base in Iceland, but now only has bases in Alaska and Greenland, while Russia has 3 times as many all along the Arctic. A few weeks ago, America had detected 2 Russian submarines in the Atlantic. With no indication as to how many more there are, Grace then circles a small nuclear submarine base in Scotland called Cregan. Can you see where this is going? All of the UK's nuclear weaponry is housed in Cregan, and it's the only base in Europe that America can dock their nuclear subs, and the last hope they have at detecting any nuclear Russian subs before they enter the Atlantic. Scotland hates nukes just as much as they hate England's overreach, so if Scotland had gone independent, say goodbye to Cregan, and God bless capitalism. Grace doesn't deny for a second that the 41 deaths were her fault, even if it was an accident, but Kate needs to understand that she doesn't run the freaking country. Grace's explanation has a great effect on Kate, and I don't blame her. I'm still trying to process it all too. Kate tells Hal that Grace should remain as vice president, but Hal encourages Kate to call Gannon and inform them of what Grace did. Let justice decide Grace's fate. Kate can't believe Hal just told him this because Grace did something that Hal would have done in a heartbeat. Nevertheless, she realizes that he is right and asks Hal to make the call to Gannon, as she wants to have a clean profile when she becomes vice president. Yeah, she's completely sure this time. So as Kate takes Grace on a walk, where Grace expectedly asks that Kate not tell anyone what she told her last night, Hal goes directly to Rayburn because Gannon likes to be Gannon, and tells him everything. And it goes as well as you'd expect. Rayburn is so shocked from hearing the news that he dies? Wait. I was not expecting that. And this, of course, means that Grace is now the President of the United States, possibly making Kate the Vice President. Be careful what you wish for, Kate. Season 3 begins with Secret Service men rushing in to get their new President Grace to safety, while Kate and Hal panic over the fact that blame for killing the President could fall on them. This is really bad. On the bright side, though, America finally has its first female president, so yay feminism! A makeshift command post is constructed inside the Winfield house, allowing Grace to address her new cabinet over in America. They try to determine what caused Rayburn's death, and who he was speaking to in a private meeting, and Kate has to admit it was Hal. Hal is then questioned as to why the president might have died during their meeting, especially since Rayburn wasn't in the healthiest condition at the time. Let's just say he had a vending machine diet. During this, everyone scrambles to figure out how to swear Grace in as president, and Kate suggests they do it right away at the embassy. In the meantime, Hal admits to Grace that he killed Rayburn when he told him that the false flag attack was Grace's idea. Grace is outraged, but Hal confesses he told Rayburn because he thought he was doing the right thing, informing his commander-in-chief about a rogue agent in his cabinet. Grace wants Hal arrested, but Kate points out that Grace has bigger problems right now, because she's now the leader of one of the biggest nations in the world. Per Grace's request, Royland is given asylum and placed in a much more comfortable safe house, or should I say, safe cottage. By now, she has learned about Rayburn's death and how it happened. That night, she's given her routine pain medication, but she intentionally takes more than she is required to. Grace is sworn in as president, and Trowbridge is kind enough to supply a 600-year-old Gutenberg Bible for the ceremony. Afterwards, Todd, Grace's husband, and now the first gentleman of the U.S., arrives and helps comfort his wife. So does this make this show a reunion of the West Wing? Hal awkwardly interrupts their time together and tries to vouch for Kate as her new VP. A few minutes later, Grace speaks with both Kate and Hal, where she announces she wants Hal to be her vice president, not Kate. Episode 2 begins with Kate devastated by Grace's decision. Despite Hal trying to convince Grace that Kate was a better candidate, Hal then tries to make the most of their situation, trying to be there for his wife and find a way that she can hold an important government position and still make a dynamic duo. Kate, who has been silent ever since Grace made her decision, quietly tells Hal to say yes to being vice president. We then get a flashback to Baghdad, 2010, when Hal was the U.S. ambassador to Iraq. At that time, Kate was just his employee and secret girlfriend. When Hal got appointed to the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations internal organizations in Vienna, Kate wanted to go with him. Hal didn't want Kate to come because she'd be given useless tasks there, and this prompted Kate to suspect Hal as a prick, and what they had was a fling. So Hal asked Kate to marry him, and she said yes. Hal fashioned a ring out of a twisty tie, and that, my friends, is how those two got hitched. Back in the present, Kate struggles with having to resign as the UK ambassador in order to become the second lady of the United States. It's worth noting that the second lady is a very background person in the United States government, and hardly does anything unless it's with the vice president. Basically, Kate is going to be her husband's wife and nothing more. At that moment, Idra enters to inform Kate that Royland committed suicide. Remember those pills?
I haven't quite figured out how to say a British citizen killed herself in a CIA safe house she wasn't supposed to be in.
Are you
gonna get fired? Probably.
Idra wants Kate to stay because if she stands by Idra in this matter, there's a good chance it won't look so bad. Basically, there's a good chance Idra will get fired over this, so don't worry, she'll be fine for now. During this, Hal contacts Billy and blackmails her into giving Kate a great position, as he knows that Billy knew about Grace's involvement in the attack. The best Billy can do is appoint Kate as the United States Special Envoy for Europe, which would allow her to do some good in places like war-torn Ukraine. Hal tells Kate she can do this and still be second lady, and she tearfully hugs him. Kate then has the unfortunate task of informing Trowbridge of Royland's suicide, and as expected, the news shatters him, but he's more upset about why the CIA held on to Royland and didn't immediately hand her back over to the Brits. Kate explains that they had to after the inauguration, and adds that she will soon be leaving the UK. She doesn't say why for security reasons, so Trowbridge assumes she's being demoted and tells her the most British way to go to hell.
Best of luck. And may the road rise up to kick you in the tits.
Dennison tries to comfort Kate and say it wasn't her fault and she's grateful for their friendship. But as they board the plane to take them back to Washington, Kate has a change of heart and decides to stay as the UK ambassador. Hal understands and goes back to Washington without her. So does this mean they're finally getting a divorce? Episode 3 begins several days later, where we see Kate now at the White House along with Hal, Billy, and Grace for Rayburn's funeral. Everything is awkward for everyone as more than one of them is in some sort of a transition period, but it seems like Kate is having the hardest time trying to establish herself as the second lady and the UK ambassador. Both jobs happen to be on separate continents, which is also going to make things difficult if they're going to set a positive image for an American marriage. That night, Kate and Hal have another fight over something stupid, and although they've been talking about it for some time now, they decide to have a public marriage, private divorce. It's basically a separation, but they'll still pose together for photo ops, and this will allow both of them to do their jobs, and won't have to pretend that they love each other anymore. So much for the positive American image. After the funeral, Grace officially names Hal her vice president. Before he leaves with Grace for the White House, Kate gives him a double goodbye hug. Maybe it doesn't mean anything, but it's nice knowing she still cares about him and wants him to be safe. Episode 4 begins with day 1 of Kate officially being the second lady, and she now has 24/7 Secret Servicemen, led by Ulysses. She struggles getting used to all the protection, especially having a body double. And can you blame her? Another thing that is annoying is everyone, including Trowbridge, only sees Kate as their direct link to Washington via the vice president. It's hard to do your job when everyone wants you to help them do theirs. Later, Kate attends a cocktail party at Dennison's place, where Kate finally manages to call Hal using a secure landline. She's been trying this entire episode to reach him, and she only managed to because she used their emergency word, Arden, which could mean anything from I'm going into labor to help, I'm being kidnapped by Somalian pirates. Hal has are relieved, but mostly irritated to find that Kate is alive and well, and abuse their emergency word, especially since he was in a very important meeting. As expected, their conversation involves a lot of yelling. Kate hangs up upset, but she doesn't want to deal with her security team, so she calls Dennison to help her sneak out of the room. Since this is his house, he comes to her rescue, and the two end up chatting and venting to each other, even getting a laugh or two from each other. It is here that Kate makes it very clear to Dennison that her marriage is over, which is very awkward to say, but Dennison gets the message. He grabs Kate, something he's been wanting to do for a long time, and kisses her, and she kisses him back. And things start to escalate to the point that Kate wants to go all the way with him. Dennison suddenly stops as he feels the timing of this is bad, and he awkwardly leaves. We find out later that Dennison used to be married a long time ago, but his wife killed herself. I think it's safe to assume that he's still recovering from that. Episode 5 begins 5 months after the events of the last episode, where we see Kate hosting a multilateral event alongside Callum Ellis, a science researcher in the North Sea, and Kate's new secret boyfriend. Hal makes a surprise visit, hoping to surprise Kate and make her happy, only to see her romantically touching Callum. Well, that's kinda awkward. It's very obvious Kate and Callum are already sleeping together, and Hal can't help but do what he does best: be himself.
It's the least I could do. I'm not asking if he's a leg man or a breast man. I'm just trying to figure out what he does in a great yawning universe that is ornithology.
This is when Kate asks Callum to reveal who he actually is, and it turns out Callum is not a boring scientist, but an MI6 agent. Yeah, he's not just a pretty face, is he, Hal? He informs Hal that his research in the North Sea involved tracking down a Russian nuclear submarine that sent out a distress call off the British coast. Despite being shocked by who Callum is, Hal is still mad that he's sleeping with his wife, but Kate points out that they agreed that they're no longer together, so Hal shouldn't care who she sleeps with anymore. When Callum leaves, they have another classic Wyler argument upstairs. Here we go again. Hal is shocked that she and Dennison never got together. He got married a few weeks ago, and Kate says she tried. Kate points out that Hal has no right to be shocked this would happen because he chose to be vice president and agreed to separate from each other. She storms out of the room and into her office, where she cries hysterically. Back at the embassy, Idra collapses on the couch in Stuart's office. She's come here to vent because she's become overwhelmed by all of her duties as the go-between for Russian assets who recently defected to the US. She then does something unexpected. She asks Stuart if they can go out for a drink. Stuart is very hesitant at first, but then he accepts. Idra then asks Kate if she can talk to Hal about one of her defectors, Boris Andreev, who claims he was Lenkov's former colonel.
What did you say?
Boris is also claiming that the US was responsible for the attack on the HMS Courageous. Kate hears this but doesn't give away that it is true, but if you zoom in on Kate's head, you can see her brain is at DEFCON 1. Regardless, Kate gets Idra to tell Hal this, and given the circumstances, they decide to make Idra one of the few people still alive that knows the truth. To say she is shocked is an understatement. She accompanies them back to Washington on the Air Force 2, in the hopes that they can hide this as one more Kremlin lie. So much for her date with Stuart. Poor Stuart. Can't catch a break, I tell you. Episode 6 begins with the Wylers and Idra arriving at the Penn's private residence in New York to deal with the potential fallout of Andreev's allegations. Hal ends up handling business instead of Kate, which is hard for Kate as she's a bit of a workaholic. Todd, still wearing a towel around his swimsuit, takes her under his wing. He's totally embarrassed the idle comforts of not doing anything as the second gentleman. Kate finally gets invited into the briefing with Grace, where they figure out the best course of action. Given all that's happened, it is to finally make this conspiracy public. So, to avoid painting Grace as a war criminal, they come up with a plan to place all the blame on Royland, but still mention that Grace went to Royland for a solution, since American involvement is coming out regardless. They make it seem like Grace needed help, but then Royland went rogue and planned something they didn't agree on. The whole thing still looks really bad, but what else are they gonna do? The other part of this plan is informing Trowbridge of America's involvement, since he still doesn't know yet. The hope is that Trowbridge publicly blames Royland for them, as the alternative is he takes the secret to his grave. This of course assumes Trowbridge will follow this damning plan to help the Americans clean up their mess. Naturally, Kate and Todd are the only ones realizing that this will most likely lead to Grace's impeachment if they follow this plan. Hal acts like he doesn't believe this, but then Kate realizes Hal is only agreeing to this plan so Grace will be impeached and he can become president. Hal denies this and convinces Grace that Kate called him a liar, not as an ambassador, but as his wife. As Kate is escorted off the property back to London, Kate gets a brilliant idea, but no one, including Hal, will listen to her. At that moment, Todd is doing his routine laps in the pool, and Kate is so desperate to tell someone her great idea that she strips to her underwear and joins him. This is off the record, right? She tells Todd that Grace should instead blame Rayburn for everything. He's dead. What is he gonna do? Todd rushes inside to tell Grace, and Grace is wholly against the idea of ruining the legacy of a dead man. But at the end, Grace decides to blame Rayburn for what she did. The next morning, Trowbridge and Dennison arrive, and Grace tells them Rayburn worked with Royland in the attack. Trowbridge is shocked, and Dennison later tells Kate that this news is still going to shatter the alliance between their two countries. The episode ends with Grace and Trowbridge at a press conference making the conspiracy public, but Trowbridge stabs America in the back and blames Rayburn for everything, including everything Royland did. Yeah, you should have seen this coming, Kate. Episode 7 begins with the world in shock, and Hal, Gannon, and Billy trying to figure out how to handle the press conference fallout. Gannon suggests Grace apologize, as there are people protesting from around the world, including right outside Winfield House. Hal instead insists they don't, and use what just happened like they were already planning to. Meanwhile, back in London, Kate has her security guy Ulysses smuggle Callum into Winfield House to avoid protesters outside the grounds. Callum informs Kate that they found the Russian sub with no survivors, 12 miles off the British coast. To make matters worse, the sub is carrying a nuclear warhead, the Poseidon, designed to maximize fallout. The Brits aren't able to retrieve it, so Kate offers American support. Callum says they can't help because the White House already knows and offered their support, but Trowbridge denied it, and because Trowbridge has blocked all diplomatic channels. Regardless, Kate tries everything to get a meeting with Trowbridge, but later learns from Idra that he added a bilateral meeting with the Chinese. This makes Kate suspect Trowbridge is asking the Chinese to help them recover the Russian nuclear sub. Kate shares this theory with Billy, but doesn't take it seriously until Kate mentions the Poseidon is on board. Grace then calls Trowbridge, and they agree to a summit in the UK. I guess Grace is going to have to apologize after all. The final episode, so far, begins with Grace arriving to meet Trowbridge at Chequers, the country home for the Prime Minister. Alone, both of them apologize. Grace for what Rayburn did, and Trowbridge for stabbing her in the back. And they put all that aside and focus on the Russian sub, but Trowbridge doesn't believe the Poseidon is real. Regardless, Grace once again offers her help in retrieving it, and then Trowbridge storms out of the room. Well, I think that went really well. After hearing Trowbridge still doesn't trust Grace, Kate goes to Callum, hoping he could convince Trowbridge that the threat is real, since Trowbridge trusts him. Callum is hesitant because there's a good chance he will be tried as a Russian agent, and his source will be executed along with his family. Callum then suspects that this was Hal's idea to get rid of him. Kate tries to convince him that it wasn't, but they both know it might as well have been. That night, the Wylers, the Penns, and the newlywed Dennisons join the Trowbridges for a state dinner. Everything is very fancy and elegant, but the passive-aggressive tension in the room is so thick you could cut it with a chainsaw. Lucky for Kate, she gets summoned out of the dining room by Callum, so has decided to convince Trowbridge. Kate gives him her word that Callum and his source will be protected, but there's a good chance they won't be able to. Kate returns to the dinner to inform Hal, to which he refuses Callum's help. He knows they won't be able to save Callum, and he doesn't want Kate to lose the one good thing in her life. Kate explains it was her idea, and Hal gets even more angry at her. Somehow, this argument gives Kate the idea for the US to take pictures of the submarine using drones and send them to Trowbridge as proof. They can worry about the consequences of invading territorial waters later. Kate then informs Callum they found another way, and he's beyond grateful. He and his source won't have to die. They kiss, but Kate can't stop thinking about what Hal told her. They show Trowbridge the pictures of the sub, and Grace convinces him that yes, they invaded British territorial waters, but they did it to help him. If that doesn't mean they are on the same side, I don't know what does. But Trowbridge still refuses America's help. Trowbridge thinks that this is some American deception. So Kate and Hal convince Trowbridge to bury the sub in concrete, to ensure that no country, not even the US, can access it. Trowbridge finally gets the hint, and I can finally stop having an aneurysm. After the meeting, Kate asks Hal to take her back to his wife, and he accepts.
We're still here.
They prepare to head back to the States when Callum pulls Kate over to inform her that the Russians already found the sub, meaning they already have Poseidon. Apparently, radiation levels around the sub have dropped significantly, meaning the weapon is likely already gone. Keep in mind, this is speculation, as there are two things aboard that sub that generate an enormous amount of radiation, one of them being the Poseidon. So there's a chance Callum's sources are wrong, but then again, what if they're not? Kate informs Hal, who informs Grace, but watching their faces during the conversation, Kate realizes Hal and Grace had secretly ordered the recovery of the Poseidon before the meeting with Trowbridge. Hal had used Kate's suggestion to bury it with concrete as a cover. They didn't send unmanned drones to take pictures, they sent an entire American sub to extract the weapon. Kate realizes this could start a war between the Americans, the UK, and Russia, and Hal orders Kate to not say anything. Hal then tells Grace that Kate figured it out, to which Grace says something in Hal's ear. Nothing to worry about, right? And that brings us to the end of the show so far. I'm sorry I had to end it on a cliffhanger. I was really getting invested in this show, and I can't wait for season 4 to drop next year. Thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think will happen next, and make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.